We are joined on this episode by an actor, a filmmaker, a comic book writer who you may have seen in stints on television series including Heroes, Dexter, and Friday Night Lights, films including Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Beyond the Gates, After Midnight, and the upcoming sci-fi thriller Night Sky. She's also the writer-director of 12 Hour Shift, which we'll talk a bit about with her here shortly. She is Brea Grant. Brea, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It was actually really tough to condense you down into a little soundbite there because you have so much going on.
I know, it's an embarrassment of riches right now during the worst time to have an embarrassment of riches.
No, indeed. Yeah, it's good to be as busy as you can when so many people are not or are looking to be. We usually kind of start off by asking our guests how they broke into their respective fields. And with you, did acting come naturally? Did you kind of fall into it from something else? Or how exactly did you get your start in the business?
Like, did I come out of the womb acting? I love the idea that it would come naturally. Like,
I guess by the natural, I mean, was that what you wanted to do from childhood, or did it spark somewhere else, or some type of piece of pop culture gave you the bug for it?
By the way, I just want to say, anyone who said I just fell into acting, they're lying to you. It's very hard to become an actor. No, I did like acting as a kid. I'm from a small town in East Texas, and I liked acting as a kid. I was in local theater. I mean, that was the extent of it, just local theater. There wasn't any not even any commercials or anything like that. It was just theater at the university and stuff like that, and in school, I guess. Then I went to college and I got a master's degree in history thinking I was going to be a history professor. But along the way, I really started disliking school, and just everything about the university system was not agreeing with my personality. And I was actually having a lot of trouble speaking in my my grad school classes. And I was like, well, what did I used to love to do? And I remembered I loved acting as a kid in these small plays. So I started taking acting classes sort of for fun, sort of to help me talk better in those classes, be able to speak better and feel a little less shy. And it just kind of started, I just really liked it. I took 2 classes over the course of a year in Austin, not at the University of Texas, but while I was going to the University of Texas. And I was just oh, this is rad. I really like it. Maybe I should try to pursue this. And I took a semester off grad school and moved to California. And that was kind of it. And then I kept pursuing it, and I finished my master's degree. I just had to write my thesis. So I did that while I was out here, and I never went back. Yeah.
Now, in East Texas, I believe it was Marshall, right? That's way up by Shreveport almost.
It is it's almost Louisiana. We're right there on the border.
What took you to Austin? You said you were going to University of Texas for something else. Did you have another pursuit that you were thinking?
Just for history. I have American Studies was what I did. But I went to Austin. I don't know. I mean, Texans tend to go to Texas schools. It's hard for us to think outside of that. There wasn't really any other thing I was thinking of. And I wanted to go to college, but I was sort of not sure what I wanted to be doing. And when I was there, I started as a math major, because I'm weirdly good at math. And then I decided I didn't like that. And then for a while it was pre-med, but then I was taking these fun classes, weird history classes. And I was like, oh, I like this. I like the study of culture. And that kind of led me down the history road. And my brother was going to University of Texas as well. And I think that kind of influenced me, made me want to go there.
Right. And then as you started kind of delving into acting, once you found yourself in LA, from early on, were you interested in getting behind the scenes and working behind the camera? Or did that kind of come about after you had, acted on several projects over the years?
Well, so, I mean, when I moved to LA, I was pursuing acting, but also I thought I might want to be a producer, but I didn't really know what a producer did. So I moved out here not knowing anybody and not really understanding anything about the industry. So I had an internship at a production company that was also a management company that eventually became my management company years later. But so I kind of learned what a producer did and was I don't know if this is exactly what I want to be doing. And then acting started taking off for me. I think I just didn't know. And there's this interesting thing I think about being a young woman who moves to LA. It's you do get definitely pushed in front of the camera, regardless of what what you're trying to pursue. And I think for me, it felt easier to pursue acting than anything else because I could see the goal. It was very apparent. And I didn't know that much about sets. But weird story. I was waiting tables and I got an offer to be on Friday Night Lights. I auditioned for Friday Night Lights like 5 times or something before I actually got it. But I got an offer to be on Friday Night Lights. And the same week, there was a producer that would always come in. And I had told him, I wanted to do stuff in the industry. And he offered me an assistant position to be like his assistant. So I kind of like had to choose, like, did I want to go and be a producer with this guy who was doing like these big budget comedies? Or did I want to go and do this recurring role on Friday Night Lights? Because I couldn't really do both because it was like both kind of like life-changing events. And I did the Friday Night Lights thing, which ended up working out great for me, but definitely could have ended up in a different universe, I think.
In a weird twist of fate, sent you back to Austin, which that show was shot in and around Austin.
Yeah, it's not really a twist of fate because they knew me from when I lived in Austin. So before I moved to LA, I auditioned for, I think, 3 different things. One was a short film, one was Friday Night Lights, the pilot, and one was a feature film. Like those were the 3 things I auditioned for while I was still in Austin. And the casting director remembered me and didn't know I lived in LA. And so I would get auditions to be in Friday Night Lights, and I would fly myself back like overnight to go audition locally and pretend I was a local. And that's how I ended up booking Friday Night Lights. Is I think the 4th or 5th time I did that, I actually booked it.
Nice.
That's funny.
It's funny. It's very stupid. I mean, I was young. I wasn't that young. I was like 26 or something. So I wasn't that young to be making such wild decisions, but I did it anyway. And it worked out.
It worked out. So, yeah. But I totally understand what you mean about how, when you first moved out there, you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do. And, you just kind of liked movies, right? And liked being involved in the process. And I think when you're an independent filmmaker, you're often doing so many different parts on a film anyway, that it's like, I can't even distinguish what my role is because I just like being part of this process. And it takes a while to kind of like find yourself in it,
Yeah, for sure. Because I didn't go to film school. And I think a lot of people have that same story where at least at film school, you kind of like try your hand at a bunch of stuff. And for me, I hadn't had that opportunity. So I didn't really know until I was on a lot of sets, like what all of the options were.
Yeah, for sure. And then you definitely were on several major TV shows, which is awesome. Then you sort of kind of found this niche in the genre community. How did that come about, and what keeps drawing you back to the genre?
Yeah. Well, so I did a couple of big TV shows, and then I did Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was in there somewhere. And because of that, I think it opened doors to these indie filmmakers who kind of knew who I was because of that movie and to an extent Heroes or Dexter or something like that. But yeah, once you do like one indie genre movie, I think all of us in the indie genre world are fans of other indie genre movies. So they will start calling you. And as an actor, it was so wonderful to like have incoming calls for things and know I could have like a job or something that was cool coming up, regardless of like my audition status. If but I was auditioning for stuff still, but like these calls would come in to do, smaller indie movies. And it was just kind of exciting to be working, period. But then also I'm a fan. So that was really nice. And early on I did like maybe one drama that went to festivals and did nothing. And I was like, I worked my ass off on this drama, like as an actress, and like really exposed myself, like the whole thing where I felt like, I really like went there, and then this movie did nothing. But then I like watched where these horror movies went, they like all found like cool fan bases and people were rad about them. And like, there was always like interesting feedback. And like, some of them took me all around the world, like to, the film festivals in other countries. And I was like, I like this. This is rad. This has like a built-in audience. People are cool. And it's stuff I like. I mean, it's really hard for me as an actress or as a filmmaker to read a drama and get really excited about it. Or even a straightforward comedy. Like, it has to be something I'm really, really interested in. But when I read a genre piece, I like genre, I watch genre, I read genre, like it's all I do. So like, it's so much more interesting to me. So it just kind of made sense for me to kind of stick in that world, Does that make sense?
Completely. I think that's what attracts me to the world too. It's like there's a great community and you just feel a sense of belonging. I remember the first time I went to a horror con, I was like, oh, there's other people like me that are into dark and spooky things. And that's just a cool feeling. And there's not a lot of other genres that have that same type of community around them. So yes, you made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking before, I think before we started recording about Fantastic Fest, but I remember going there and like kind of early on in my career, I didn't have anything there. I was just like attending as a fan, and I was like, oh, there's some really weird movies here that are genre, but they're also like something else. And that was really exciting to me, that this like community was embracing these like wild, bizarre movies, and some that were made for like, $10,000 or something like that. And you could really like explore fun stuff like within this community. And I didn't find that at some of the more mainstream festivals, where it felt like it was just like, it was like they were trying to make a big budget movie, like a big budget drama, but like with not the budget. And that just wasn't interesting to me. I'd rather like make something far more artistic and weird.
Yeah, I know. Brad and I always joke that some movies should be like, the genre should be a Fantastic Fest movie because it's like, it doesn't quite fit. It's like, oh, it's kind of horror, but not really. It's also kind of sci-fi, but it feels more grounded. So it's like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's a Fantastic Fest type of movie.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good segue into the first feature you directed, Best Friends Forever, which is, again, one of those kind of like mishmashes of genres. So that was made in 2013 about two best friends on a road trip that just happens to take place during the apocalypse. So I'm curious, was that an idea that had been in your head a while, and that's kind of what compelled you to jump into the role as a director, or were you looking for an opportunity to get behind the camera and that was the one that just kind of aligned?
Well, I'd co-written it knowing I co-wrote it with Vera Meow, and she and I knew we were going to star on it. That was the goal. And we actually had a director team attached, and those directors, we had a director team attached, and like, as indies go, like, we lost our money. We had some money, we lost the money. And the director team was like, we don't think we want to make this for like $50,000. And we were like, totally understandable. We understand. Why would you want to do that? They'd already made like a decent sized movie. And so we were looking for another director, and we were talking to people, and I was like, well, I've kind of wanted to direct, and I know the script really well, and I'm really comfortable acting at this point in my life because I had been on some TV show or some movie or another for the past however many years. And so I just stepped into the role, and to Vera's credit, she was really supportive and was like, yeah, she was kind of doing a lot of the producing stuff, and she was like, I know that you can handle it. And so that was just like the first thing I decided to direct, which was, now looking back, like an insane idea. I don't know why I thought I could do it. I mean, I did do it, but it was like a huge undertaking to try to do this movie that I was like, let's shoot in West Texas and let's shoot on film. And like, I made all these like huge, big swing choices. But I mean, I'm glad I did it. It was just like such a big undertaking for my first film, and really like set my life in like a totally different course that I didn't expect, but worked out okay in the end. And we shot that in West Texas, which is cool. Texas keeps coming up.
As someone who's kind of had a lot of experience writing and acting before you did the directing, did it give you an advantage of any sort of like special insight that, a lot of first time directors might not have?
I mean, yes and no. I think I wish I had shadowed a director or something before I started, but I didn't really have time by the time I jumped into doing this. We kind of like went straight from me jumping on to like production, basically. And yes, like I was really used to being on a set. I understood how sets worked. I understood how the day worked. A lot of things like that. I understood how cameras worked. I probably didn't understand some of the other big things about working on a set that I understand now as a director, but I learned them very, very, very quickly. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example, but I mean, just very basic stuff that I thought I knew because I was an actor. But the thing about being an actor is you don't show up till several hours into the day, and then you leave early, and the day is sort of centered around you as an actor. If you are an actor, that's at least how you feel. But as a director, the day is not really centered around the actor. The day is centered around the day, and that was something it took me a while to get into the headspace of. That there were so many big things happening that had nothing to do with our acting or our performances or us in general. We were not the center of the world always, which I think is how I approached film for a long time as an actor, which is sort of embarrassing to say.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. You kind of only know what you've been exposed to up until that point. So was it pretty overwhelming start? It sounds like it was overwhelming just in general because it was your first time directing and it was a huge effort with such a low budget and everything. But do you find the pairing of acting and directing in the same film really challenging? Like, is that something you think you'd continue to do? I've noticed it looks like in the last, at least for 12-hour shift, you didn't go that route. So I'm kind of curious how that interplay works for you and if you recommend it to anyone else.
I mean, I think it's doable. I mean, I know a lot of people who do it. I think it really depends on the project. I haven't done it. That's not true. I have done it since because I work on a show called Eastsiders, and I directed an episode for them on their 4th season, and I act in the show too. So I had like a couple of scenes I was in that I also directed, but for the most part, I haven't done it since. I'm not sure if I like got scared off or what, but I mean, I think the problem with me, it felt like one thing was going to suffer. And especially for something like 12-hour shift that has so many moving parts, I didn't want something to suffer. I wanted to make sure the performances were really good. And I wanted to make sure, the camera moves and the setups and everything were perfect. And I had so much to do on that because every day was just like a really intense day full of many, many setups and many, many moving parts and all sorts of stuff. And I just wanted to make sure I was totally aware of everything that was going on. I mean, it is totally doable for people who want to do it. I don't want to discourage anyone, but for me and like where I am, it's not like acting is just not my first priority anymore. So it doesn't matter to me if I'm on screen or not in the stuff that I do. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Getting us closer to modern day here, we're coming up on talking about 12-hour shift. You have been all over Genre Fest in 2020. You have Lucky, which you wrote and performed in, as you mentioned, as well as the feature you wrote and directed, 12-hour shift. That latter was set to premiere at Tribeca, but the festival was postponed due to COVID, as everybody is aware of. Since then, it's played at a number of fests and was ultimately picked up by Magnet. Plus, you were also in The Stylist, which made a big splash at the aforementioned Fantastic Fest, their virtual version this year. So just how crazy has this year been for you?
Yeah, and Lucky was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest. So within a week, I went from having 2 movies that I had written and was involved in either as a star or the director at major film festivals to 0 movies at those festivals. So yeah, it was honestly a real fucking disappointment. I mean, I wish I could say like, oh, but like things turned around, and they did in some ways. Like I do have some positive things that came out of all of that, but it was really disappointing. I mean, Natasha, who directed Lucky, and I were actually together, and we got a call. They were like, South by Southwest is being canceled, and we were like, what? And we just immediately went we had already bought our plane tickets. We had already bought clothes, as you can imagine. We had places to stay. So we, instead of like trying to like scramble to cancel all of that, we just went straight to a bar and started drinking. And then a week later, Tribeca got canceled, and I was a little bit of a puddle for sure. Like I was not happy. It felt like I had worked really hard, and obviously, something completely out of everyone's control. And the festivals did the right thing at the end of the day, obviously. But yeah, it was a big bummer. I don't know if this is true, but I can't imagine there are many other writers who had a film at both festivals. And I did before they got canceled. But I will say, like, just to be positive, because I am sort of an optimist, is that they both played some virtual festivals, and that's been kind of cool because as much as I love in-person festivals, which I really, really do, one, they're expensive and for me, but then also for everyone else, right? So there's a lot of people who can't attend a Fantastic Fest or a Fantasia or Fright Fest or a number of festivals that we played. And instead, those people are able to buy online passes to these festivals. And there's a lot of people who got to see the movies that I think wouldn't have seen them otherwise, I think. And so that has been kind of cool, that I feel like they've been exposed to like a totally different audience than would normally go to the festivals. I think the festival folks are still kind of going to the virtual festivals, but like just having them exposed to other folks who couldn't necessarily travel for whatever reason, I think that that's been kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, it's definitely been a weird year.
No doubt for everyone. It's been really interesting seeing how fests have adapted to virtual editions of them. So I want to get into the 2 films that we just talked about. So with Lucky, I had read somewhere that it was based on like your own experience as a woman, being both the writer and the lead performer. What was it like to collaborate with a director to translate something that was so intimately your story that you were also acting out?
I mean, in some ways it was tough, like I just personally, having nothing to do with Natasha, but because Natasha Kermani is the director, because she's so good at what she does and she had such a very strong vision for the movie from the very beginning, I felt very safe with her, which I think is the key when you're doing a role that's so close to you in some ways. In some ways, the role is not. I didn't write the role for myself. I ended up doing it, but it was really nice in some ways because I got to hand it off to her and then focus on the acting part of it because it was such a big role. And I think she did an amazing job. I mean, literally, like the script got optioned and she came on really early. Like basically she was part of the team from the very beginning. And we went over the script a lot and I did some rewrites based on locations and a couple other things that we felt like we couldn't afford, like just for budgetary purposes. And then I just stepped back and was like, okay, this is yours. This is your project now. You're the leader. I really believe in having a singular vision. I think it's really important on, especially like a film like an indie feature. I think it's super important because I think a lot of times, even on indies, you end up with a lot of voices in there and then it starts to feel like a mishmash. And I didn't want that for this movie. And I knew if I had a lot of opinions and came in there with like sitting behind the monitor with her that I would have a lot of opinions as well. But I really wanted it to be hers. And I think she just has a great vision generally for the things that she does. And it's really strong. And so it was nice because I got to step back and I just focused on what I know how to do. And it allowed me to, I mean, for lack of a better term, it allowed me to goof off. Like I had just come straight from shooting 12-hour shift. We'd wrapped that 3 weeks before. So I was in post for 12-hour shift. I would literally go edit some days. Like I would edit during the day and would shoot Lucky at night. So it was quite intense. And so knowing that I had her to take care of my baby with a script that I had worked on for years and years, it felt really nice.
I really appreciated her direction of Lauren Ashley Carter in Imitation Girl. I thought she was excellent. So it sounds like, luckily, pun intended, you were in good hands with Natasha because it just seems like she's great to work with, for actors and can really drive a great performance.
Yeah, definitely. And allows me to I'm actually as an actor, I think I really let off steam on set by being goofy, just goofing around. And it's such a dark film that I am going to make a lot of jokes and try to lighten the mood. And it was good because she allowed me to have that space to be a dork and kind of play loud music in the makeup room and get into the mode of being able to be vulnerable.
That's awesome. So transitioning to 12-hour shift, was there a similar personal inspiration behind the story as well?
I mean, yes, only that it's things that I'm interested in. And I originally wrote it to take place in East Texas, where I'm from. I wanted to set something there in the 90s when I grew up there. So I definitely drew on that and from people I knew. And then I also included, there was a story about a nurse, a killer nurse who killed people using bleach during dialysis. And that made it into the script as well. There was no organ harvesting happening, but in my hometown, but there was some scary nurse stories. Other than that, I have spent quite a bit of time in a hospital just because I have an elderly father who I am responsible for. So I have just spent time in hospitals, and that's a familiar setting to me. So in that way, I guess it's also somewhat personal.
That makes sense. It all starts with the kernel of something, right?
Oh.
And then you were mentioning, how you wanted it in Texas, which Arkansas is right nearby, but you kind of were somewhat basing it around hometown. But is the time period also something important to that?
Yeah, I think for me, that was just an interesting time as a teenager because it takes place during Y2K, right before Y2K. And I was really scared of Y2K. I thought horrible things were going to happen. And then I also wanted this movie to feel a bit well, first of all, the film is very subjective, right? So in my subjective experience, the 90s happened in East Texas. So that makes sense to me to set this movie in East Texas in the 90s because that's part of me. But also I used some urban legends and wanted to play with the urban legend idea because it's about this kidney being lost, which is sort of an urban legend trope, I guess. And then Y2K to me is also an urban legend in some ways at this point. So I kind of included a bunch of stuff from the 90s that I just really really like.
And speaking of an actor, and I think of the late 90s and the Scream franchise even, the cast included both David Arquette and Mick Foley, so it wouldn't be me if I didn't ask you, is there some wrestling connection in there, or is that just a coincidence?
Well, so David was a producer, and early on, his wife, Christina, was also a producer, and she was like, well, if you want any wrestlers in the movie, like we can call some wrestlers. And I was like,
Gotcha.
okay, I can't name that many wrestlers, but I can name Mick Foley. Do you think he'd do it? They were like, yeah, what role do you want him to play? And he was super nice and came down and did it. It was very exciting.
No, that's awesome. One of the few you could name was willing and able.
I know. I would have been kind of screwed if P had not been available. I would say I have some knowledge of wrestling, but it's all from the 90s to like year 2003. And then I don't think I have much more.
That's most people. That's when it was kind of at its peak, so it's understandable. Attitude Era.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sean knows. I don't. I'm like, I want to say it's the Attitude Era. I had to learn a lot about wrestling on an earlier podcast.
Oh.
I shouldn't say I had to. I got to. I got the experience of learning. Speaking of the cast, I think this movie seems like it fits perfectly in Angela Bettis's filmography. Like, it just seems like a great, meaty role for her. Did you always have her in mind for this role, or did it just like the pieces kind of fell together maybe when she read for the role or when someone reached out to her, an agent, about it?
Yeah, no, I didn't have her in mind. I mean, when I first started writing the script, I think I was much more like, I'm creating roles for myself as an actor. And that trajectory kind of changed as I just got older and decided I didn't necessarily want to be acting as much. And so when we went into production or pre-production for this, we talked about me playing that role. We talked about a couple people playing that role, but I've always been a fan of Angela Bettis's. I think she's super rad. And we asked her if she would do it. We actually sent it to her agent, and they basically were like, it was written for a little bit younger person. And there were a couple other things, and they were like, she's not going to respond to it. And we were like, oh, okay. So I went around them. Hopefully they never listen to this. I mean, I guess it's fine now. But I went around them through a mutual friend of ours and was like, I'm going to send you the script. Read it. Tell me if you think Angela Bettis would like it. Because if not, I will stop pursuing this, whatever. And my friend was like, no, I think she'd dig it. She'll like it because it's funny and whatever. So that person actually sent her the script. And then she responded to me through them. And then we ended up going through traditional channels, but it was basically me like bucking the system a little bit.
Sometimes you got to do that to get things done. And at least you were doing it in a respectful way, right? It wasn't like you were stalking her or like DMing her on social platforms or something.
Never DM someone and be like, be in my movie. But I felt like because I had a friend who's also a professional director who I was like, and respected my work, I feel like I can make this connection and it won't be too much. But it was definitely a testament to that friendship for sure.
So what was the difference between the Brea then in 2013 and the Brea in 2019 as a director?
Besides age and a lot more wrinkles, I mean, I'd had some more experience, which was helpful, like working in television and working on some short films. And I produced a film that I wrote as well. So like I had more behind the scenes experience, but also I think with my first film, as much as I was like, I took a lot of big swings, I felt like I wasn't as true to myself and what I wanted on every part of it. And I think what I realized when Best Friends Forever came out was no one like looks at a movie and they're like, oh, I'm sure that day she just ran out of time. Or I'm sure that day the costume designer like fucked up and that's why that looks crazy, or the production designer didn't do a good job. No one thinks about like all of the hardships of making an indie film. Right. And so I was like, okay, like for this movie, the buck is going to stop here. I'm going to take all the blame for everything, but that means I want everything my way. And I was very much less willing to bend. I was willing to listen to everyone, and I love hearing everyone's opinions. Like the last part of 12 Hour Shift is actually like was somebody else's idea, like a PA's idea. Like I love hearing people's opinions, but I was very much not willing to give up on certain things that I really wanted. I was very much like, no, we're getting all of these shots today. Like I was much less willing to compromise on what I wanted it to be because I felt like I'm the person who's going to have to, minus a COVID outbreak, stand up there with the movie and say like, oh, I stand behind this, and that was important for me to realize that if I was going to stand behind it, it had to be all me. It had to be all my decisions. And I mean, I say that with like, I had so much input from tons of people, but at the end, I think on my first film, I was much more likely to listen to people and back down from things I really felt strongly about. And on this one, I definitely was just like, no, I'm just going to take some big swings. And if it doesn't fucking work, then that's on me. That'll be my fault.
Right. All the credit, all the blame. It's like being the quarterback when you're in that position.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It happens regardless. So like, I was like, I knowing that that's what happens, that was important. I think the other thing I will say is that I tried to take it way less seriously. I think my first film, I was like, what if this is the only thing I ever get to direct? And I was really worried about that. And on this one, I mean, I had already there's such a big gap between my first and second film, and getting that one done felt like such an achievement that I was like, maybe this will be the only thing I ever get to direct. And like, that means I should have the most fun. Like, I should like have people break into song in the middle of the movie. I should like change my mind and do some crazy shit in the middle of the movie. Like, let's just like do the things that will make me happy, because maybe this will be the last thing I ever direct. And if that's the case, like, then I'm going to go balls to the wall.
Right. I'd argue that might be your style nowadays, and that's a good thing. And again, beyond your multi-hyphened resume, I mean, add comic book writer. You've done a couple miniseries, I think one with your brother, as well as a Suicide Girls miniseries. Add to her resume a long-running podcast. I don't know how you have time for all this. You're kind of amazing me with your time management, but you've been doing one for a couple years now with your co-host Mallory O'Meara on the Maximum Fun Network called Reading Glasses. Do you want to tell the folks a little bit about that?
Yeah. We've been doing it I just edited yesterday's episode. I think we're on episode 175. How many years is that? That's like 3 years, isn't it? Yeah, something.
At least into 2017.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds right. Yeah, it's a book podcast, actually. It's a podcast about reading. It's not like a book club. Like, people don't like read a book and we talk about it. We actually talk about like, it's very dorky. So I don't know like another way to like, it's not cool. It's like us talking about reader stuff, because we're both big, huge readers. And we used to talk about stuff like that all the time together. And we're like, we should just record this. So it's like us talking about like book lights and the best snacks for reading. And then we'll do deep dives onto certain genres or book subjects. Like, we just did one by popular demand about books about birds, because apparently people love those. We aren't big readers of those. We're both big like horror and sci-fi readers, but we kind of cover everything. Like, we do whole episodes on like romance novels and things like that. And we'll read one and talk about it, because just to experiment in other genres. But yeah, it's super fun. And thank you for pointing it out. I am good at time management. Thank you for saying so.
No, again, you're proving it. And no, we appreciate you're a rock star as far as we're all concerned at Paper Street. And if you're good, we will move into the next portion of this. We appreciate all the candid answers about what you've been up to and we'll get to more about what you're doing after this. But it's time for the Rapid Fire 15.
Woo-hoo.
And we say rapid fire, but we really aren't putting you like, there's no, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire dramatic music under this or anything. It's not something to be taken too seriously. Just a lot of questions about, some of your favorite stuff, what we might know about you so far, and tailored to your taste.
Can I just tell you this? I'm very bad at favorite. It's like definitely like a little bit of a neurotic thing where I can't pick my favorite because I'm worried it will like hurt all the other favorites' feelings. So just letting you know.
You're allowed to get multiple answers for any of these. So if it's 3 or 4.
Like, it's my favorite right now. It's my favorite this
There
week.
you go. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
It's not to be judged. It's just so that listeners can get a little more about you and maybe understand some of your tastes and, stuff you like in genre.
Cool.
Perfect. I love that this followed the time management thing too, because obviously Sean and I must be pretty bad at it, because it's called the Rapid Fire 15 and it's never rapid fire.
It's because we're nice to our guests. We don't put their feet to the fire, for lack of a better term, and put the dramatic music under them.
That's a good twist. It's not that we're bad at time management. We're just
it's Becky's bad at
assholes.
naming questionnaire segments, maybe.
Honestly, that's nice of you, because sometimes I'm like, I'm just like not prepared for some of these, and I don't have time to prepare for anyway. So yes, let's rapid fire and see how fast it actually goes.
Perfect.
All right, I'll start us off here. What movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
Probably that movie Elf, the Christmas movie. I used to watch it every Thanksgiving because I thought it was really funny, and that was like my getting ready for Christmas movie.
Right, start the season off with it.
Yeah.
All right. What is your comfort movie? Like your anytime, anywhere, warm blanket type of movie that you just watch to feel good?
It might be Elf.
It could be.
Well, it's more TV shows. Can I answer a TV show?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Or doing rapid fire. I have a couple of TV shows that I will do rewatches on a million times, and the main one is Parks and Recreation.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think someone else answered this with The Office, which is very similar, right? It's like all these characters that you just come to love over the years, and it's they both have like happy little theme songs. It's great.
Exactly.
What is Brea Grant's favorite horror movie franchise or favorite right now?
Franchise. Oh, right now. Wow, that's a really good question. Okay, well, I'm kind of wavering. I'm gonna say Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm gonna say Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's a solid choice. I think
Yeah.
that is probably one of the most common answers we received to that one too.
Classic, but like there's a reason why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and there's probably some newer franchises that I like. Like, I mean, there's definitely some that I have guilty pleasures about too. But yeah, that one I like solidly like. Yeah.
Nice. If it isn't Heather Langenkamp, who is your all-time favorite final girl?
Oh, great question. I mean, it might be her. I mean, I might go with her. She's pretty rad. And if that's going to be my favorite, maybe she is my favorite final girl then.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
How about who was your favorite movie villain? It could be Freddy, it could be Darth Vader, it could be...
Oh, just like any...
It could be anything, even beyond horror.
Favorite. Okay, favorite right now. Can I just say, I just rewatched The Blob, and that is a great... The Blob itself is not a villain. It's not a thinking villain, but it is a really great villain because it does not care about anything. You know what I mean? Like, it has no agenda, which I sort of like, because when the agenda is like, I want to take over the world, I'm not excited about that. I'm always like, yeah, right. Get more specific. And I kind of like that either like be specific or be like, whatever. I am like chaotic evil. And that's the Blob, you know? So that's kind of it's a very fun, weird villain that just kind of hurts everyone.
I agree, and I like that rationale. I made this point about Star Trek. They're so hell-bent on recreating the bent-on-revenge Khan-type archetype when all the great Star Trek episodes of old were like, kind of, like you said, chaotic evil, some force field messing things up. It wasn't anything like a human, motivation.
Yeah.
And those often made for the best stories.
Yeah, exactly, because it's like there's no figuring it out. You have to just like work together as humans to figure it out. There's no actual agenda here, which I get kind of tired of the agendas sometimes. And sometimes I get confused on what everyone's agenda is because I've watched too many like superhero movies and I'm like, but what does this guy want again? Oh yeah, take over the world. It's always take over the world.
So favorite acting performance, or maybe is there an inspirational performance in a movie that, you really look to as a child or something?
Oh, as a child or like currently? Because I have one.
Either or.
Well, okay, I am not a singer, but I've always wanted to do a musical. So musicals always like stand out to me. And have you seen Anna and the Apocalypse?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
I loved that movie and I loved the main girl. I thought she was so good. So I'm kind of obsessed with all those actors. But that's like a very obviously recent one. I'm trying to think of it as a kid. Oh, a movie I watch a lot from when I was younger is Girl Interrupted. I'll do a rewatch of that because I feel like all of the performances in it are really great by these really amazing young women, and they're so committed. And those kind of like have influenced a lot of characters I've played over my career. So those are also really good.
In a similar vein, who's the one working actor out there that you've not had a chance to work with, but is at the top of your list that you would really like to work with, be it acting against or even directing?
I have so many. I actually keep a running list, like the organized but obsessive person that I am. I keep a running list of people that I'm like, would like to work with them. There's some people right now on that show, What We Do in the Shadows, that I really like, that I think are just amazing. There's a lot of people on TV, but I will say like a person I love and I would love to convince to do a horror movie would be Reese Witherspoon. I think she would be super rad in a horror movie.
Ooh, I would love to see that. Awesome.
Yeah. Has she ever come close beyond Fear, arguably?
Not really her thing, but
yeah.
I just like her performances. I think she seems like a real positive lady, kind of like me, so I feel like we would bond. I don't know.
She's been doing a lot of producing lately, and doing cool projects. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so as an actor, what would be your dream role? Like if there is a particular character, a historical figure, or just a type of role you haven't had a chance to tackle yet?
My obsession with books like kind of makes me constantly want to play characters that are in books. So I feel like I used to really like tried to be like, I want to be this comic book character. I want to be this comic book character. I've kind of like aged out of most of the comic book characters because they're all so young. But I would love to play like a comic book character in general. Like that would be really rad. But more at this point, I'd like to adapt some kind of book or something. I'm going to answer a question not that you asked, like a politician. I would love to adapt a book. I'd love to adapt a William Gibson book. I love the Bridge series. I always bring that up to people. I love Hack Slash. I would love to adapt that. I'm far too old to play that role, but I would love to try my hand at adapting that. There's a lot of things like that I would really be interested in. I'm doing a reread of X Factor right now, and I will say there's a bunch of characters in that, like Siren, that I'm like, oh, I would love to have played her like 10 years ago.
Well, it's funny you went to that part next because the follow-up question was similarly, what's your dream project to direct? And it sounds like you named about 3 or 4 really good adaptations you'd take on.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've never done it, it just would be really interesting to me to like work off of a property that has already been created. So that is just like of interest to me as an artist to try to adapt someone else's work. And particularly comic books, because I just have such an affinity for them and they've been such a part of my creative life for such a long time. So yeah, there's definitely like some comic stuff I would love to adapt.
All right. So as an alumni of numerous film festivals, Fantasia, Tribeca, South by, Fantastic Fest, do you have a favorite film festival or maybe a specific experience at a film festival that you'd call your favorite?
Oh, wow. I mean, they're all interesting for different reasons, you know, like I've only actually been to Fantasia once. That was a couple of years ago. And I had never been to that part of Canada. And I just like thought that was like really rad. And they were like super welcoming. I have to say I love Fantastic Fest, but it's in part because I go home and I get to see, I consider Austin like one of my homes, and I get to like stay with my friends and like see people I went to college with who are still some of my best friends, as well as like see like a lot of people who go every single year. Like that one feels definitely the most like a place that feels like home. And every year I actually go with my mom. I don't know if y'all know that, but my mom is really into, she doesn't love horror, like straight up horror. So she doesn't do the like last time slot, you know, where all the like really scary horror movies play, but she will go to like the like first 3 or 4 time slots because she loves foreign movies. She loves weird movies. Just anything bizarre she loves, and she knows way more about them than I do. So we go together and then we make our schedule together and get an Airbnb, and we've done that like 4 or 5 times now at this point, and it's kind of like our mom-daughter bonding thing we do every single year. So that definitely has a special place for me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's adorable.
I love it.
Yeah, it honestly, it's like a little bit of a, I love when I have a movie playing there myself, like as an actor, and this year I would have had one maybe otherwise as well. But it's always a bummer because I feel like it takes away from mom and daughter time. Like, cause I'm like, oh, I have to go do press, but I'd rather go watch movies with you and go eat at the restaurants we go eat at and do our stuff together.
Right. We've touched on your work in the comic field as well, and you all even mentioned X Factor and some other stuff you've run through recently. Do you have a favorite comic book run, as in like a story arc or graphic novel?
I do love those Peter David X Factors. I do think they're really good. I also love Hack Slash. That was like a real important one for me. I feel like getting into comics and really finding my place. I also really like, I love Fables. That's one that I think is just super rad. I mean, I will say like the one that got me into comics, wow, I just named so many. This is not a good rapid fire, is The Invisibles. That was the one that like made me go like, oh, I like comics. Apparently comics, there's something in comics for me, which was important because I didn't know, like I wasn't exposed to them when I was younger. And then I read The Invisibles and I was like, wait, I don't have to like know all about Superman or something to start reading this. You can just pick this up and like start reading it. And that was a huge moment for me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome. So in honor of your podcast, Reading Glasses, do you, since you're such an avid reader, have a favorite novel or a series or an author?
No.
Yeah.
Don't make me choose. One that I'm really into, and I feel like I'm constantly recommending it to people. See, now I'm like, well, but I can't say them because then I'll feel bad about this other person. Okay, there's a series called the Wayward Children series, which I'm really into. It's sort of like fantasy horror series about by Shauna McGuire, and it's about a school for children who are the children who sort of come back from a Narnia type place. Like, so you go to Narnia, you come back as a child, you're kind of fucked up because you're like, what, where's Aslan or whatever, you know, like you have these like weird ideas of what reality is. So there's a school for children who've been to various weird worlds like that. It's not specific to Narnia. It doesn't even involve Narnia, but that's like the example. So it's like children who've like passed through the wardrobe, been through the other side of the mirror. And then it's this whole series just about them and how weird they are. And like, there's the first one's like a murder mystery. The first one of the series, which is really good. I really like those. I love Paul Tremblay. I love everything he's doing right now. I feel like he writes for me. He's such a good writer. Every time I read something of his, I love it. And I love Charlie Jane Anders is a really great like science fiction writer who's she's just doing amazing things. Those are three I really follow very closely, but honestly, I sit here and name it. If you had another hour, I could talk about it. I talk about it every week. Tune into the show.
In the show notes, look for her podcast, Reading Glasses, where she will talk about that and more.
Mm-hmm.
What is Brea Grant's walk-up music? Like if you're coming in for your TED Talk or if you're coming in as a fighter or a ball player, what are you walking into?
Oh my God. So it's like music that gets me pumped, or it's music that like describes me? Like what?
Maybe more that describes you. Like what would make sense if you came out for a TED Talk? What's the DJ blast for the people to get an idea of what they should be expecting?
I would say it's either like some Dolly Parton song or something. Or like maybe Jackson 5. I love Jackson 5. I don't know if that's a description of me. It's just a band. Just really like them. There's also this song by the Eels called Prize Fighter that sometimes I listen to get pumped and like think like, oh, this is my song, you know?
No, all good answers. And again, you said you're a positive person, so a Jackson 5 tune will get people in a happy mood. So that makes sense.
There you go.
9 to 5 by Dolly, showing what time management expert you are. All of those work.
All of those. I love them all. All right, so this next one, I'm going to give you 3 different types of food, and you have to kill one of them, meaning you can't ever have it again. Okay? And these are all corn-related barbecue sides.
Just get very specific, Becky.
I know. Well, I was going to do barbecue sides, and then I had this like really big like corn inspiration. I don't know. Anyway, so it's cornbread, corn on the cob, or hush puppies.
Oh, wow. You know, I'm going to say corn on the cob because I don't like the teeth situation, getting that stuff stuck in your teeth. I can do without it. Get it off that cob. I don't need it on the cob.
It's also the healthiest one on the list.
It's actually super healthy, but like I don't need all that. Like I would scrape it off. I don't need it on the cob.
Yeah. Corn is actually kind of like net neutral in terms of it doesn't actually add much nutrients wise, but the cornbread and hush puppies are probably worse for you.
I'm, as a person who cooks quite a bit, I make cornbread and hush puppies. I never make corn on the cob.
There you go.
Fair.
And finally, what is the one thing that you have not been able to do since the quarantine and social distancing that you're kind of dying to do, or will be the first thing you might do once a lot of these restrictions of the pandemic are behind you and us?
Besides go to a film festival? I mean, that would be the thing, but I would also say just go to the movie theater, which I'm sure is a lot of people's answer.
Certainly not.
Yeah, I miss it so much. And the traveling for festivals, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss traveling for sure. And they opened an Alamo Drafthouse not too far from me last year in LA, and that was awesome. And I loved it because I could get there in 10 minutes, park, go eat my lunch, like watch a movie. I love a midday movie by myself. That's like one of my favorite things to do because it feels so like luxurious. Because like most of my life like doing some job or another that I couldn't do that, and that was just like my favorite reward to myself. And I loved Alamo Drafthouse because I could also eat while I'm there, which I love eating and watching movies. That's the best.
Yep.
So nostalgic for it. I'm in the same boat, Brea. I work downtown at my day job, and I only got to enjoy that theater for 6 months before the pandemic hit it. Maybe a little longer than that. But I was doing the same thing. I was abusing my lunch hour. My lunch hour became my lunch 2 hours, and I would run, see a movie, and eat a bite there.
Yeah, see that it's like the best. And last year I had such a hard year last year. I did 12-hour shift. I had 3 weeks off. I did Lucky, and then I think I had 2 or 3 weeks off, and then I went to Bulgaria and directed a TV show. And I came back and I was like, I'm so tired. Like I'm exhausted. And the very first thing I did is went to that Alamo Draft House and watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I was like jet lagged. And I remember just thinking like, wow, I'm really living my best life. This is the life I would like to live, is to be like jet lagged and tired and watching a Tarantino movie and like eating some food and like, but I'm jet lagged because I'm doing the thing I love. And it was just like, I have such a like fond memory of it. And I'm so bummed it's not there anymore. Or I guess it's there, but no one's in it.
Yeah. Are they doing the thing where you can rent the theater privately there?
In Texas and other spots, but not in California.
Yeah,
there are restrictions galore here right now still.
Although I heard they're doing it maybe in California, AMC or somebody was going to do it in California.
They are, yes. You are allowed to rent. I think Burbank's one of the few locations around Southern California that you can pay like $100 and get to choose from a list of 30 movies and bring as many people as you want in your party to it.
That's cool. I think I'm going to do that for Christmas with my family.
Right.
Awesome.
Brea, that's the end of the questions, and you did great despite the word rapid and the word favorite coming up too much and getting everybody in their own head. No, we appreciate those answers for sure. We want to ask a couple things before we let you go. What's up next for you? As far as I know, you've stayed busy pre-pandemic. I'm sure you're staying busy during, even though the festivals physically aren't there. Do you have something coming up you can talk about?
Well, my graphic novel just came out. It's called Mary. You can get it at all book places. And it's like a YA sci-fi book about the fictional descendant of Mary Shelley, who discovers that she is supposed to be this liaison to the monster world. And that's super fun. So I'm talking about that quite a bit. I also directed a couple episodes of a show called Pandora on the CW. And depending on when this comes out, they're like coming up really soon. I directed episodes 4 and 5, and I wrote episode 9. So you can catch up on the show. We're only a few episodes in right now, and you can watch those. It's a fun sci-fi young people show. That made me sound so old.
Well, you sounded like CW's mission statement.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Lucky is out. Well, 12 Hour Shift is out right now everywhere. Please go buy it and rent it. That money is the only time I will ever see money from that movie. And Lucky will be out on Shudder next year. So
awesome. Everyone should check those out. And one thing I wanted to note, since you brought up your comic book, Mary, have you read Romantic Outlaws?
I have.
Oh, yay. I love that book. It's basically it's a biography about Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, who were mother and daughter. And Mary Wollstonecraft, for people who don't know, is like a very important political philosopher. And so they're two extraordinary women who never actually really had an opportunity to meet. But it's a great book. So yay, I'm glad you read it.
Yeah,
I don't meet people that have read it much.
Well, because I did this thing about Mary Shelley. I read a bunch of Mary Shelley biographies, but that one is definitely one of the best ones because I like how it goes back and forth between their lives, and you kind of get to see their different journeys. And yeah, I mean, they're just so interesting. And obviously Mary Shelley had such respect for her mother, and that actually kind of plays into my comic a little bit too. So
yeah. Cool. I'm excited to check it out. So where can people find you online if they want to follow you on social media, or if there's a website you want to direct people to?
I'm off of all social media except for Instagram because of the aforementioned time management issue. I just found that I was spending too much time on Twitter, and it was making me sad. And so I'm only on Instagram at my name, Brea Grant.
All right. We'll have a link in the show notes to check you out there, and as well as to your podcast and some other spots.
Well, thank you so much, Brea. It was so awesome to learn about your career and so many different areas of the entertainment business. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, very much so. We appreciate the time and making the schedule work. I know we were all on a tight, different amount of availability today. So yeah, it was well worth it. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the answers, and can't wait to see what's next for you. So thank you very much, and take care.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.